Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. At Auburn, Iron Bowl in basketball, part 2. These two teams played about 2 weeks ago in Coleman Coliseum. Really entertaining game. Alabama ends up winning that game at home. Return game at Auburn on Wednesday night. Top 20 matchup. Auburn gets the win. Final score, I believe, let me double check on this. I believe 98 to, let's see, make sure I got this right. 98 to 99-81, okay? So first of all, shout out to Torres. I did have the under in this game as my best bet. Not my finest moment as a professional bettor. I'm not a professional bettor, but yeah, as a bettor. Not my finest moment, okay? But I want to talk about this game. Big game, big result, big matchup. I think it was a great win for Auburn. But before we get into this game, and listen, this is no disrespect to Alabama fans or Auburn fans. I don't really want to talk about the result as much, even though I do think it's important for Auburn, excuse me. What I do want to talk about, this was one of the wildest games from a refereeing perspective that I have ever seen. And what I will also say, this game was just a total debacle from a refereeing perspective. I'm just going to, for people who didn't watch this game, let me just give you some stats on this game. In this game, I don't think you're ready to hear this. You know, it's like, you know, you want the truth, you can't handle the truth. 99-81 was the final score. In this game, there were 61 total foul calls in this game. 61 total foul calls in a 40-minute basketball game. This wasn't a triple overtime, quadruple overtime game. 61 fouls. But beyond that, how about this? This is the part that's crazy. 85 foul shots in the game between Alabama and Auburn in a 40-minute basketball game. And so we'll break down the game. We'll talk about the wins and losses. We'll talk about what matters and what doesn't. But I have to say this. That is just so unacceptable. And I am also here to say, Greg Sankey, this happens way too often in your league. You've got to do something. Before we get to this game specifically, a couple things. Because one, I know what people are going to say. First of all, Torres, all you ever do is complain about the refs, okay? You've been complaining about Purdue and Zach Edey all year. You're complaining about this. You're complaining about that. Now you're complaining about Alabama-Auburn. And it's crazy because it's a little bit of a heel turn for me. I'm usually the guy, like, I hate whenever a team loses. It's like, oh, it's always the refs' fault. So I don't want to be the guy that's always complaining about the refs. And I will say in general, I think college basketball, the refereeing situation has actually been a little bit better this year than it has been in years past. I think it's been a lot better. They've figured out the block charge. But again, and by the way, I'd also say this. I understand that the way Auburn plays, they're very physical. They're very tough down low. It makes the game tough to officiate, especially, by the way, because I had a referee friend reach out, say, hey, I was working. I didn't have a chance to watch this. How bad was it? I also get that they kind of started the game early with a tight whistle. It's a rivalry game, crazy crowd at Neville Arena. You don't want things to get out of control. But you just can't have this in major college basketball. Again, I just want to reiterate. 85 foul shots, 61 total fouls in 40 minutes of play. Producer Matt, I just told you he is a Miami Dolphins fan. He is also an Auburn grad. This should have been, celebrated in the streets. I got a call out Thursday because I'm too hungover from celebrating this win. Instead, he told me it was as unwatchable for him as it was for the rest of us. And so when I look at this game, like a few things. One, first of all, it's not fair to the consumer, okay? And again, I'm not anti-referee guy. Every game needs to have three, I'm not that. But think about those fans at Auburn. That is a small arena. That is a rivalry game. My guess is that some of those tickets went for hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for a top 20 matchup in one of the fiercest rivalries in college sport. And I get Auburn won, so you're happy, but they didn't pay to see that. By the way, me as a consumer, you as a consumer, did not want to watch that either. I rearranged my whole schedule. It's my job. I get it. I'm not saying you should feel sorry for me, but I'm sure many of you did too. It's a Wednesday night. There's nothing else going on. We're still 5 days away from the Super Bowl. We got a top 20 matchup I want to watch. And about probably 10 minutes in, you probably had to turn it off. I'll be honest. This is not going to make me sound good as an analyst or an expert or whatever you want to call me. Many of you would call me neither. I basically didn't watch the second half. It was clear Auburn was going to win, and the refereeing made it unwatchable. Not fair to the players either. Say this, put out a couple tweets. Don't want to say who, not going to put them on the spot. Had a couple players like the tweets because they're like, this is a showcase game for us too. Auburn is trying to prove how good we are. Alabama is trying to pick up a huge signature road win. NBA scouts are in the building, national TV game. It's the only game in town. And the game was ruined by whistles. And a couple last thoughts, and I actually want to give a little bit of credit to Auburn. Apparently, like in the Auburn community, they think I never give them credit for anything. Anyway, neither here nor there. But from, I guess my last thought is this about the refereeing. Because I had a lot of people push back. Well, Torres, you know that the SEC doesn't have, because I tagged Greg Sankey, and I know he didn't see it. I know he doesn't care. But I tagged Greg Sankey, and I had people, you know the SEC doesn't have its own refs. Like, in other words, like the SEC does not have its own refs. Like they don't employ referees full time. And I get that. For people who don't know what I'm talking about, every referee in college basketball is an independent contractor. So you could literally have a guy working one night, the USC UCLA game on the West Coast. The next night, he could be working Alabama-Auburn. You could have guys working 6 games in 6 days, 6 games in 7 nights. Like these guys are independent contractors. They don't work for the league. And so I had a lot of people saying, Torres, why do you think Greg Sankey cares? Why are you tagging him? He can't control it. And all I would say to that is you cannot tell me that Greg Sankey, the most powerful man in college sports, and he is more important than anybody at the NCAA, more important than Tony Petitti, more important than any of the other commissioners in college sports. You cannot tell me that Greg Sankey, at least for his league, can't do something. I'm not saying he's got stuff on his plate, okay? I'm not saying he has to overhaul the entire refereeing situation in college basketball. But you mean to tell me that Greg Sankey, who has been a leader in every area of college sports for about the last 5 years, starting with COVID in college football, he snubbed his nose at everybody else that said it couldn't be done. And from there, whether it was expansion, whether it was whatever, he has set the tone for everything in college sports. And so you mean to tell me that he can't find some sort of solution? Because it's only hurting his product. Remember, ESPN is only going to have more SEC games going forward because they are ESPN is the exclusive home of the SEC starting next year. No Big Ten on ESPN, no SEC on any of these other networks. And so your product is going to be on TVs Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday, every single week, all college basketball season. You have to figure something out. It's got to be better than this because this has been an ongoing thing. And that was the thing that stood out to me on Wednesday night. It wasn't just Alabama fans complaining. Auburn fans weren't happy either. Tennessee fans chimed in. Arkansas fans chimed in. Kentucky fans chimed in. Ole Miss fans chimed in. Everybody understands that this is not good enough. I don't know if the answer is hiring referees full-time. I don't know if it's eliminating certain referees from being allowed to call your games. Wink, wink, nod, nod. You know who I'm talking about in terms of the 2 or 3 truly miserable refs in this sport. But you can't have that in a showcase game. And it really marred what was otherwise a good game. Really quickly, do want to give some credit to Auburn because, listen, Alabama's really good. I think Nate Oates is actually doing an incredible coaching job because I think Alabama's good. I don't think they're anywhere close to as good as they were last year. Auburn's a real team, though. Play about 9-10 guys. I know that drives some Auburn fans crazy. They want too many guys in the rotation. Whatever. It's working for Bruce Pearl. I think they're 19-4 right now as I record. Very much in the SEC title race. And what's interesting about Auburn, if you look at their schedule, the schedule kind of breaks very nicely for them in terms of a run towards an SEC championship. Right now, as the standings sit, there's a 4-way tie in the loss column with South Carolina, Auburn, Alabama, and Tennessee. Tennessee actually has 1 less game played, so they're technically a half a game back. But I only bring it up because you look at Auburn's schedule. They've already played Alabama twice. They only play Kentucky once, South Carolina once. They get them both at home. They do have to go to Tennessee. Final 5 games of the regular season, 2 games against Georgia, with their head coach, mediocre Mike White, he's terrible. Missouri, the worst team in the league. Mississippi State at home, which is beatable. And you do have a game against Tennessee, but their next three are at Florida, South Carolina, Kentucky, and they have a very, very manageable stretch those final few minutes, or final few games, excuse me. So credit to Auburn. One last thought, by the way, on Auburn. If you have not seen Janai Broome, their starting center yet, this guy's unbelievable. First of all, shout out to my guy Preston Spradlin, the head coach at Morehead State. Janai Broome played at Morehead State for a couple years. I know Coach Spradlin well. I talked to him the last time they made the tournament when Janai was a freshman, and he told me the whole recruiting story, whatever. But this kid transferred to Auburn 2 years ago, and listen, it's hard to argue that anyone other than Dalton Knecht should be SEC Player of the Year right now. But Janai Broome averaging 16 points per game, 9 rebounds, 2.5 blocks, and he's doing it in 24 minutes of play. I think he's as good as any big man in college basketball outside of obviously like Zach Edey, maybe one or two others. But I mean, this guy is so good, does not get the credit he deserves. That guy should be on every All-American list. I think it's Evan Maya basically puts out some stats and whatever. And he said that statistically, he's been one of about the 6 or 7 best players in college basketball.